There's a lot of good stuff in this interview with the former CDC director, Robert Redfield. It was done with Fox News medical contributor Mark Siegel, who did sit down with Dr. Redfield, Dr. Mark Siegel, and Louisiana Senator, Republican Senator John Kennedy joins us now as well. Gentlemen, great to have both of you with us. Mark, just to sort of follow up on something that was said here that really stuck out to me, is that Dr. Redfield is saying, you know, yes, generally a virus goes from animal to human over a very long period of time, very long evolution. He said, but what's different about this virus is that this is the first virus that we've had with a pandemic that came after we started gain-of-function research. And this virus looks a heck of a lot more like what was made in labs in gain-of-function experiments than it does like what occurs naturally.
Absolutely. Structurally, it does. It has a site on it that increases spread. And as you said before we came on before, it exploded around the world. That's not how it goes in nature. Viruses have to acclimate. They have to slowly mutate over time. It doesn't suddenly explode around the world and cause this inflammation.
Doesn't Dr. Fauci know that?
I think Dr. Fauci should know that, and I think that people I've spoken to off the record have told me that he's biased on this. Not that he's compromised, but that he believes in this because he believes in that gain-of-function research. One other point, Martha, is that Dr. Redfield told me that if he had been allowed in this lab in January, he thinks he could have proven this in 2 weeks. But he was not allowed in, and he kept applying, and he said it was very suspicious because why should he have to make a formal application anyway?
Right.
He has CDC right down the street from the China CDC.
And if, as they say, there was no COVID-19 in that lab, they should have just opened up the doors. Nothing to see here, doctor. Please come in. I want to bring in Senator John Kennedy, who is requesting more investigation about where all of this money is going. And I thought, Senator Kennedy, that was the other really interesting moment in this interview is when Dr. Redfield says, well, you know, the U.S. funded this gain-of-function research, too. And so those people who were involved in that didn't necessarily want people looking in the lab. Your thoughts?
Well, the more I hear, Martha, the more disgusted to my core I become. Yeah. It's very clear Dr. Fauci has a conflict of interest. And he's had one since day one. And he should have declared it. Now, Dr. Fauci, through his friend, Dr. Peter Daszak, gave a lot of U.S. taxpayer money to the Wuhan lab to study bat coronaviruses. But Dr. Fauci didn't monitor how that money was being spent. If it turns out that this virus came from that lab, then a lot of questions are going to be asked of Dr. Fauci. They should be asked anyway. So Dr. Fauci had a vested interest, or at least the appearance of a vested interest, from day one to be so adamant that it could not have come from a lab. Now, I'm not saying Dr. Fauci lied. I'm saying that he's got a conflict of interest as big as Dallas. And on day one, he owed it to public health, to the American people, to stand up and say, look, I'm not the best person to ask on this because I've got a conflict here.
You know, Senator, when I look back, right, at the origin and the beginnings of this virus, it's coming from Wuhan, China, right? That didn't come out of nowhere. It was just all of a sudden we heard about Wuhan, China. Most people had probably never heard of Wuhan, China before. So I got to believe a lot of bells and whistles went off in the heads of the people who were involved in gain-of-function research because there are only 3 labs that do it. There's one in North Carolina, there's one in Texas, and there's one in Wuhan, China. So why didn't, you know, so if it's the case that they kept moving everyone away from this theory, oh, it definitely came from the wet market down the street. Absolutely came from the wet market down the street. I mean, that starts to really smell bad, Senator.
Well, let me be blunt. Dr. Fauci funneled the money to the lab through his friend, Dr. Peter Daszak. They have both been cheerleaders, especially Dr. Daszak, for the animal theory, the natural theory of the virus. I guarantee you, when this thing first broke, both Dr. Fauci and Dr. Daszak both thought to themselves, oh my God, we gave taxpayer money to the Wuhan lab. What if they did gain-of-function research, as it's been done 11 times since 1992, and the virus escaped. Now, I'm not saying it did or didn't, but they both should have stood up and said, wait a minute, I've got a conflict of interest here. I gave them money.
Yeah.
We didn't supervise them. And I'm the wrong person to weigh in on this subject.
Yeah, or at the very least said, you know, look, here's what we need to explain right now. Let's get all of this out in the open right now because we have a concern about this. We know that lab had, security issues that were reported by State Department investigators not that long before who went there and were concerned about that lab.
It's always the cover-up, Martha.
Yeah,
always.
It's really it's chilling, you know, when you look at all of this. And, you know, I wonder, Dr. Siegel, let me just bring you in here as well. What happens now? Because now they want a new WHO investigation. Senator Kennedy wants to do an investigation into where this money went exactly. For gain-of-function research.
First of all, the WHO is deeply compromised. As Dr. Redfield say, they shouldn't even be involved in this at this point. They've been carrying water for China from the beginning. And as far as gain-of-function research, I want to agree with the point he's made. It's a network of researchers around the world. As much as I blame China for this, if it is a lab leak, we are also indirectly or even directly involved because these are a series of the same researchers. It's not just Xi Zhengli. She also does work with Dr. Barrick in North Carolina. This is the same group. So it's an international problem.
Yeah, let's pull up. This is video that comes from Sky News Australia. It's of bats in a lab. There is some discussion that these are bats in the Wuhan lab, but this is, you know, as brought to us by Sky News Australia. You know, and another just line that jumps out at me, Senator Kennedy, before we go, a last thought. Dr. Redfield, the U.S. funded a lot of that research, and yet when we watched Senator Rand Paul question Dr. Fauci, he said that wasn't true.
Well, Martha, it seems to me that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Daszak and Dr. Collins and these other folks that know about this gain-of-function research need to tell the American people that scientists all over the world are taking, with and without our taxpayer money, are taking normal viruses and turning them into super killers. And by the way, if they escape, they could kill all of us. Just a thought that the American people might want to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and this research was originally founded so that they could create viruses and then learn how to cure them as sort of an exercise to figure out if this happens, how would we cure it? How would we have a vaccine? But when you're dealing with, you know, these kinds of viruses, you obviously need to have the highest security that is possible. Well, and if there's any chance that this thing leaked out of there, and we don't know for sure yet, but no, we need to do more digging.
We don't, but you got a lot of self-interested arrogance at work here. And when you have a conflict, you need to declare it.
Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, thank you very much, sir. Mark Siegel, excellent reporting, a great interview. Thank you very much. And thanks to Dr. Redfield for sitting down with Dr. Siegel, because this is extremely important to the entire country and to the entire world.